My sister set me up so that I ended up at rock bottom, while she, as always, was shining at the top. My parents applauded her, colleagues admired her, and it seemed like everyone forgot that it should have been me in her place. But there's one thing she didn't know. I wasn't planning to go quietly. And this is just the beginning. My name is Mark. I'm 28. And if you knew my younger sister Emma, you'd understand just how unfair life can be. I've always had to fight my way up on my own, clawing toward any measure of success. While Emma, well, let's just say she was born with a golden ticket. Seriously, who even came up with the term golden child? As if she didn't just have a personality, but a throne cast in bronze and a crown she was born wearing. Since childhood, Emma got everything handed to her on a silver platter. If there was a new toy in the house, it was hers. Needed extra classes to highlight her brilliance? No problem. Our parents didn't even bat an eye at spending extra money on her. They doted on her to the point that Emma never even learned what no meant. It was always, yes, of course, darling. Yes, please. You're the best. And me? I was the kid who had to learn that nothing in life comes for free. Quite the lesson, especially with my own golden child sister right by my side. Anyway, let's get to the point. After college, I landed a great job at a prestigious firm. Oh, I was really building my career, brick by brick, finally earning some recognition. I was finally climbing the ladder. My colleagues were listening, and the management even started nodding in approval when I pitched ideas. Things were going well, at least by my standards. But then, of course, Emma. I still don't know how she managed to get through university. If anything, she just coasted through. But since she was Emma, the special one, our parents pulled every string they could to land her an internship. Where, you ask? My firm, of course. They thought it'd be beneficial for her to gain experience with strong people around her. Convenient, right? Especially since she got placed right in my department. And the way she behaved. If only you could have seen. Zero interest in the job itself, but absolutely captivating to the higher-ups. She flirted, batted her eyelashes, and naturally, it worked. She was entrusted with more responsibilities and practically settled right into my role. As much as it disgusts me to admit, she does have a talent for survival among sharks. And there she found the perfect tank, right beside me. One day, she approached me with this fake sweet smile, asking for my help on a project. She outright asked if her big brother could lend a hand. How sweet, right? I felt like I was dragging a drowning person along. But could I say no? After all, we're family. And if I'd refused, it would only have led to a ton of unwanted questions. So I did what I could. I helped, I explained, so that she could at least pretend to know what she was doing. And what did I get in return? An absolute nightmare. A few weeks later, when I arrived at the office, I was called straight to the boss's office. They fired me. Can you imagine? Just threw me out. The reason? Allegedly falsifying reports and misappropriating company funds. It sounded so absurd that I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. But nope. Turns out Emma was already comfortably seated in my chair, confident and smug. They tossed me out the door, and she took my place like nothing ever happened. Think I was in shock? No, it wasn't shock. It was pure betrayal. She hadn't just taken my position. She'd destroyed everything I'd worked years to build. Imagine it. My entire career came crashing down in a single day. I'd spent years laying every brick, hustling, pushing myself, and who tore it all apart? My own sister, the person I grew up with under the same roof. She managed to tell everyone that she'd always dreamed of my position, while painting me to my colleagues and the management as a greedy fraud. Seriously, Emma? Is this some twisted revenge for the times I ate your candy as a kid? At first, I was furious. I wanted to march right up to her and ask how she could even think of doing this. But the more I thought it over, the clearer it became. Anger wasn't going to help here. She wasn't playing on the level of emotions. She was playing a serious game of chess, and by that point, she'd already made me out to be a ruthless fraud who preyed on companies, stole money, and skipped town. The company's lawyers were now handling the case of my life, and it was clear that I hadn't just been fired. This disgrace was going to stick to my resume like a permanent stain. I thought things couldn't get any worse. I tried to talk to the company, pleaded with them to look deeper. But you know what? No one was listening anymore. My character was compromised, while Emma, Bravo, the heroine who had always dreamed of this position, was already sitting in my chair, basking in the spotlight. She was performing her part to perfection, while my reputation sank like a stone. The only person who stayed by my side was my best friend, John. He not only refused to believe in this circus, but he also offered to help. John's the kind of friend who'll wade knee-deep into the mud if it means pulling you out of it. We went through a full-blown brainstorming session and came to one conclusion. The only way to prove my innocence was to find dirt on Emma. Real dirt, not just rumors, something solid. We knew that gaining access to her computer was our key to success. At first, I toyed with the idea of making her confess, but honestly, who was I kidding? Convincing her to admit she'd framed me? That'd be like trying to convince a tiger to stop eating meat. She was entirely certain of her victory, and annoyingly, relishing every second of it. That's when I realized that all those ideas of fairness were just empty words. We needed a concrete plan of action, and I had one. John and I devised a bold plan. We decided to tail her. She often stayed late at work, so the chances of her apartment being empty were pretty high. One evening, when she was still at the office, we slipped into her place. It felt like something out of a spy movie, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. But when I saw the folder on her desk with the company's logo, it was the best adrenaline rush I'd ever felt. Inside were financial documents, and guess what? There were a few forged reports with my name on them. But even better, a flash drive left in her computer. It was like hitting the jackpot. Without a second thought, I plugged the drive into my laptop and boom! Copies of all the fraudulent transactions popped up. Emma had set up such an elaborate web of falsifications that it made my hair stand on end. She'd framed me with such cold-blooded calculation that it was actually terrifying. This wasn't just a career move. This was her complete obliteration of my name and reputation. With the evidence in hand, I could have gone straight to court and ended her career in one swift move. But would that really have been justice? Too easy, too clean. No, I wanted her to feel every single moment of her downfall. I wanted her crown to slip slowly, for each step down to be painful and humiliating. A real show, with her as the star of a spectacular disaster. So, the first thing I did was stage an act of, I've given up, life's over. I pretended I was leaving town, defeated by shame, and soon enough, the rumors spread. Poor broken Mark was leaving to escape his disgrace. Think Emma was worried? Hardly. In her mind, she was probably soaking in the applause, thinking she'd won. While she basked in her imaginary victory, I quietly started asking around my former colleagues about her recent achievements. You wouldn't believe it, but she'd already begun to turn some people against her. A genius at betrayal, she unleashed her talent at full throttle, carving her path upward without a single care for the consequences. How perfect! At this point, I moved on to more direct action. I started small, dropping a few rumors that I accidentally overheard, hinting that maybe Emma wasn't as spotless as she seemed, that maybe her reports weren't quite so impeccable. Strangely enough, people began connecting the dots themselves. Colleagues with more brainpower than my desk started noticing that some of her projects looked odd, like the numbers didn't quite add up. They didn't have proof, of course, but the suspicions were there. And so the office rumor mill began to turn. Every time someone mentioned my name, I swear Emma would tense up. She was nervous, even if she tried to hide it. Watching her confidence crumble bit by bit was almost funny. But the real thrill came when the higher-ups finally caught on. They started reviewing her projects, and I kept a discreet watch. It felt like I was the director of a film, waiting for the climax of my masterpiece. Management found out that half her reports were complete fabrications. They called her in for a grand review session that was more like a public evisceration. Emma, of course, had no idea that every move had been orchestrated by me down to the smallest detail. She thought she was just having a bad day, or maybe a rough week, But when they laid her own forged documents in front of her, along with the audit results, she realized that her ship was sinking, and it was no accident. Emma was fired. Just like that, they threw her out of the company, as if she were a glitch on a screen that finally got erased. She didn't just lose her job, she lost the respect of everyone who used to at least pretend to tolerate her. The colleagues she charmed into looking up to her as some kind of cover girl heroine now saw her as nothing more than a punchline. Well, as they say, that escalated quickly. And me? I watched the whole thing with cold satisfaction, and to be honest, pure enjoyment. Yes, enjoyment. Every time I saw her world collapsing like a house of cards, it was bliss. The irony of it all. Emma, the golden girl, the untouchable one. And now? Her fate had taken a nasty turn. She had no job, no respect, no fancy connections, and no shiny reputation left. The cherry on top? Even our parents who'd pampered her all her life finally turned away. They were stunned when they learned how low their beloved daughter had stooped to betray her own brother. They couldn't forgive her, and finally, they opened their eyes. To them, I became something of a hero who'd defeated the villain. A bit dramatic, sure, but I was fine with that. Who'd have thought they'd ever see her in her true colors? The sweetest part? She practically destroyed herself. I only made a few adjustments, pointed her in the right direction, so to speak. Her own ambition, her arrogance, her belief in her invincibility did the rest. By her own hand, she tore down her life, leaving herself with nothing. No job, no family, no friends. For her, this was the end. For me, it was just the beginning.